Time I call the member for Heffron.
Mr. Acting Speaker, this is a self-indulgent, arrogant government that can't help itself. It just can't help itself. There is absolutely no reason this bill is being debated in this House today or during this sitting. No reason whatsoever. There is an arrangement between the opposition and the government, an arrangement whereby the opposition has been, during these COVID sittings, offering confidence to the government on the basis that no controversial legislation will proceed through the Parliament at this sitting. That is the arrangement, and that is the arrangement that has been working in this House for weeks. And let me tell you, Mr. Acting Speaker, it hasn't been an easy arrangement to manage, because there were many times when the government could have been in some difficulty, but I gave undertakings that I would ensure that the government would not lose a vote on the floor of this House because the opposition considered that stability of the New South Wales government was more important than taking any political advantage. And that is the way in which we have been operating. You're so self-indulgent and you're so arrogant, you haven't even asked the three independent crossbenchers for supply or confidence. You're getting it from us. And what do you do? What do you do when the first opportunity comes to try and create a political wedge? You, contrary to that agreement, introduce legislation that you know that the opposition cannot support. You know that the opposition would be first to stand by frontline workers who have put their own lives and health at stake during the pandemic. Those frontline workers that you fraudulently prance up and down this House and say how wonderful they are until it comes time to give them anything, let alone a presumption that they might have got COVID at work, to be able to claim workers' compensation. And what's worse is that you know this bill cannot proceed through the other place. You know that you have lost every single crossbencher in the Legislative Council. You know that. And the discussions that I've been having with members of the government, the intelligent ones, know that too. And I know that they have been telling the Premier that this bill can't go through the other place and honour the agreement and the arrangement. But no, there's no agreement or arrangement to be honoured, because you had the member for Monaro and the member for Bega here, and you thought that the member for Cessnock wasn't going to be here. You thought that somehow or other you'll slip something through. You've been prancing up and down the corridors wanting to move that the question be put. You thought that somehow or other you'd use your numbers for doing that, but unfortunately the government whip found that the two Liberal members on the crossbench wouldn't support you and sent the Premier's Chief of Staff scurrying back to his office to report to the Premier that you can't deliver that in this House. You're doing everything you possibly can do to create a division and a debate you do not have to have unless there be some political benefit. And that political benefit has been identified effectively by the member for Rockdale in a very boisterous way in which nobody could misunderstand what he was saying. This is a narrow-minded Tory Premier who thinks he can garner some popularity by pitting the employers against the workers and say that this is old-style Labor. This is old-style Labor. That's what this debate is all about. This is what this debate is all about, to try and get some political advantage of a bill that you can't get through the New South Wales Parliament. You can't get it through, so why are we here? Why are we here? Why are we talking to crossbenchers? I mean, you've lost every crossbencher. Every crossbencher. And I tell you what, you really had trouble even with your own crossbenchers, I can tell you that too. For what? For what? For what reason? Why would you break an arrangement you've got with the opposition? Why would you risk stable government? Why would you do that? For what reason? Maybe somebody will be able to indicate that in reply. Now, the reality is that what this bill does do is try and repeal the provisions of Section 19B, which provides that a worker engaged in prescribed employment contracts the disease COVID-19 is presumed, unless the contrary is established, that the disease was contracted by the worker in the course of their employment, and the employment was a substantial contributing factor or was the main contributing factor. And I just want to invite this House that when the COVID-19 legislation amendment emergency measures miscellaneous act was enacted, 2020 was enacted, the Attorney General in his second reading speech said this. You see, and mind you, the Attorney had no qualms with evoking the memory of the mother of modern nursing, the lady with the lamp, Florence Nightingale. A second reading speech he delivered on International Nurses Day, Nurses Day 2020, on the 12th of May 2020, on the 200th anniversary of the birth of Florence Nightingale. Now, more than 18 months later, the Liberals and their National Party mates are proposing to pull the rug from the feet of the very workers on the front line that have been battling this disease. This provision that so concerns you relates to prescribed employment, which includes the following workers. And these are the ones you are trying to needlessly shaft, and you're not getting your bill through. The retail industry, the healthcare sector, including ambulance officers and public health employees, disability and aged care facilities, education institutions, police and emergency services, refuges, halfway houses, homeless shelters, passengers, transport services, libraries, courts and tribunals, correctional centres and detention centres. These are the frontline workers who are required for our community to function, and those are the ones that you wish to remove the presumption in favour of having attracted COVID-19 at work. Merry Christmas to those who risked their lives for us. Merry Christmas to those that are still risking their lives. Those retail workers in the supermarkets who are required to go to work and who are required to serve unvaccinated people as we speak, and will have to do that. Right until past the 15th of December. Those are the people that you are targeting in a needless bill that you cannot get through the House. So why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? You are somewhat concerned about workers' compensation costs to business. You know, the member for Rockdale's been having his little tay-to-tays, and I told him he was wasting his time talking to Dominic Perrottet when he was Treasurer because he'd ignore the advice he'd given. But he had been advising the Treasurer in all genuineness that he needed to address the workers' compensation liability and address the employer's costs of claims. He had been advising him to do that for more than a year as part of the opposition's effort to support the government during COVID. And that has been ignored. He had been advising the then Treasurer and has been saying so continuously that the government needs to set up a COVID fund so employers don't have to burden the cost of COVID. There is a way to do that, to underwrite the cost of employers. And there is a way to do it in a cooperative way, rather than provoking, than trying to provoke the workers and their representatives shortly before Christmas. Why would you do that, Mr. Acting Speaker? I might have an extension of time.
Question is members' time be extended. All that opinion say aye. Contrary no. 5 minutes granted.
Now, the rationale for this particular amendment bill claims that modelling by the Doherty Institute is based upon opening the economy at 80% vaccination rate, and independent actuaries for CIRA has found that COVID-19 claims could cost the New South Wales compensation workers system up to $638 million in benefits, with a 25% increase over the next 6 months. Now, the scaremongering government claims that this could mean the average premium for small employers could increase. But there is no research to back up their claim. The government says that COVID cases will most likely be attributable to community transmission, not as a result of COVID in the workplace. Now, Labor has put this position that the modelling is based on outdated figures. The reasoning behind the need for the presumption clause has not changed. COVID is still amongst us. And do I have to remind the members of this House that European countries, particularly those who vaccinated with Pfizer, are going through their 4th and 5th wave as we speak. It's actually the UK that is doing reasonably well because most of their citizens have been vaccinated with AstraZeneca as the primary vaccination. So we're still dealing, and that's without the release of analysed data. It just happens to be that the material has been released only today. So the risk of contracting COVID for workers supported by this legislation is still there. Indeed, it is higher for some workers, such as teachers and health workers, retail and hospitality employees. Now, the government's focus on reducing costs is ironic, given McDougall's findings of a failure of governance at iCare. For example, the then Treasurer, now Premier's complete incompetence in managing iCare as excessive bonuses to CEOs and tenders given to Liberal Party mates. The way forward has been, and always has been, rather than try and rush through a needless bill, has been to firstly sit down with employers and employees to see what is necessary to address this issue in a cooperative way, and to put your hand in your pocket, at least to underwrite as a COVID costs the potential costs to employers' premium whilst the pandemic is still amongst us. I just want to remind you, as I told the House yesterday, you guys pay to the Spanish manufacturers of the CBD Southeastern Light Rail $536 million in damages because you couldn't write a contract. You shred money like confetti. But when it comes to simply a protection of our frontline workers, that all of us are eternally grateful. All of us are eternally grateful. Or these employers, these small business people who were shut down during the pandemic to protect us all, who need some confidence, because as you know, business and the economy is based upon confidence, who need some confidence in the system and their ability to be able to fund workers' compensation payments, which requires some underwriting by the government during a pandemic. What you do is you destabilise them with a bill that has no hope of passing the Parliament, psychologically impacts upon their value as employees, the ones that have risked their health and life. What, simply so that the Premier can establish the old class wars of saying the same old Labor? It's for that reason you want to break arrangements with the opposition? Is it for that reason that you have no honour? No honour? Because that is how you've conducted yourself tonight.
Question is the bill being read a second time.